Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate breakdown for Monday Night Football. We got the Raiders at the Lions. Should be a fun game. But before we get into it, you got to come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS, the matchup tool, the ownership, the optimizers. You get it all, one low price for every sport we cover, $39.99 per month. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. It helps us out a ton to just feed that algo and give us a little more reach so we can keep giving out all the content for free. Now, let's get into the slate. It is going to be an interesting one. A lot of different ways we can go. And always, let's go with some ownership here. So, no surprise, Jared Goff, highest owned quarterback. Jimmy G will be fairly high owned as well. But let's look at the flex spot ownership, because I think that gives us a little more info as far as what the field is doing. And the field definitely likes the Lions. Obviously, it's -7 spread, so no surprise the field is going that way. Jacoby Myers is getting some love. Davante Adams is getting some love, obviously. And I think that actually should be how it breaks down. I think Jacoby does look a little bit better in this situation. Now, from a sheer fantasy points expected spot, yeah, Davante Adams likely scores more than Jacoby Myers, but the matchup works a little bit better for Jacoby. On the Lions side, Amon-Ra, he is questionable today. He came down with an illness over the weekend. He is expected to play, though. He has a great matchup, and if ownership, if people don't want to pay up for Amon-Ra because of the illness, I am going to be all about him. He is high owned, though, in this situation. The guy that gets the biggest bump if he's out is Sam Laporta, and I think you got to like him quite a bit in this situation. Now, let's go with a little position by position, and we will start out at quarterback here. And quarterback-wise, all right, so Jimmy G has a little bit better of a matchup. Detroit has been decent at stopping the run, but have given up some passing yards here. Lamar Jackson, 357 yards. Mayfield, 200. Bryce Young, 250. Jordan Love, 250. They have consistently been giving up some yards to the quarterback. So, with that, I think the receivers are interesting on the Raiders spot. They are underdogs, so there's likely to be a lot of passing. I do not think, though, you can forget about Jared Goff. The Lions are banged up at running back. They may not run quite as much as they normally do. And if that is the case, you can absolutely pass on this Raiders defense. We've seen Allen, Pickett, they've all had decent weeks versus the Raiders. And I think Jared Goff can do that absolutely, especially those underneath routes to Laporta and Amon-Ra, or even Gibbs out wide, little swing passes and whatnot. So I think Jared Goff is still absolutely in consideration. Now, just to show you some ownership on the FanDuel side, both of them are very high owned on DraftKings. We already went over that. They are the two highest owned players, and they should be. Running back wise. So, Jahmyr Gibbs is in the best spot in this game. It is no surprise. Stevenson, Foreman, Dillon, Cook all have had really, really good games versus Raiders D, and I think Gibbs is in a great spot to do that as well. Now, Craig Reynolds is another week removed from his hamstring injury, so maybe he is involved a little bit more than he was last week. After all, the 2 weeks prior, he had 7 carries, 10 carries, 12 total touches, and that could eat into some of Gibbs' workload there. So I think you can consider Reynolds in this spot. There is a chance that he's able to get a short yardage touchdown. On the Raiders side, Raiders have been pretty tough versus the run, or sorry, the Lions have, outside of just getting crushed by Gus Edwards and getting crushed by Walker. How they got crushed, though, was touchdowns. Walker had 2, Edwards had 1. Edwards also had like a 70-yard rush. 80-yard reception, I mean. And that's how they got it done. So it was in different ways, not quite just, rushing the ball, not through yardage outside of Edwards. Everybody else has been held in check. Now, Gibbs can beat you through the ground and the air. So I think he is a little bit interesting. Sorry, Jacobs can beat you through the ground and the air, but he's just not quite as explosive through the air. So while he's going to get all the work, I do like him. Just don't love him in this spot. Ownership wise on him for DraftKings. Oops. We have Jacobs at only like 30%. I think it's interesting, but I think I'd rather just play Gibbs at a little more expense, a little more ownership. I think he is the better just outright play. Now, if you do play Gibbs, you're going to have to figure out how to get different elsewhere. One of those ways, I think, is Reynolds. And at 3,200, 19% owned, I think there's some real pass to him having some success. And then on FanDuel, Reynolds is 7% and Jacobs is 17%. I think that's a little more interesting on FanDuel going with Jacobs than it is on DraftKings. So now let's go to the wide receiver spot. We'll start here at ownership with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jacoby Myers, and Adams all coming in the 3 highest. And these guys are the 3 that should be coming in at the highest. If we're taking anybody down below, I think Jameson Williams definitely has a path. He had 6 targets last week, even though he had 0 receptions. It is interesting to note the volume. The week before, 3 targets, 50 yards, and a touchdown. He is a guy with a further down the field ADOT. He can stretch the defense, and at his, lower price, if he is getting this kind of volume and a deep ADOT, he is interesting at this low ownership. So I need to bring that up. Another thing to note, Trey Tucker, super cheap, and his snap counts keep going up. So with that, I think he's a little interesting. Everybody's likely to play Hunter Renfrow over Tucker, but Tucker really is slowly becoming possibly the wide receiver 3 for this team. He has a little more speed and can do a little bit more with the ball when it gets into his hands. So I think he's interesting, and at his price, he's definitely worth a couple swings. On the FanDuel side, Amon-Ra is not getting the love that he is on DraftKings. While he's going to be much higher than 11%, he will be much higher owned than that. His price is just a little bit restrictive. He is 15.5. It is a big portion of your salary. That is why ownership is showing a little lower on him. And his ownership on FanDuel is likely to come in a little lower than we would expect just because of that. But I do like Amon-Ra. He is one of my favorite plays this week. And personally, I really need him to get over 17 points in season-long fantasy to give me the win this week. So I will be rooting for him, absolutely. As far as DFS, I also love the play. Reynolds and Williams are both interesting, but they're ancillary targets. And I think with Williams back, it does hurt Reynolds a little bit. I would actually rather save the money and a little ownership and go with Williams over Reynolds. On the Raiders side, Jacoby Myers is one of my favorite plays on the slate, and on FanDuel, he is at less ownership, so I absolutely like that. One last thing is to look at the matchup tool for wide receivers. No surprise, Myers is up top. Reynolds is at the bottom. Mabra and Williams are in the middle. And one of the things that I talked about on the prop show this morning is wide receiver ones have had a hard time versus the Raiders. Outside of Adam Thielen, they just haven't really got it done. Now, Devontae Adams can beat absolutely anybody, so I wouldn't put it past him to not get there, but it is going to be a little bit harder of a route for him to get there. What we have seen is when there is a good wide receiver 2 on the team, the wide receiver 2 has got a little more work, and that's exactly what could happen tonight and why I think Myers is in a really, really good spot. Now, taking it to tight end, we got Meyer, we got Laporta. Meyer is running 78% of the snaps now. So he is now the wide receiver 1. We have seen decent wide receiver or tight ends do well versus the Lions, and I would expect Meyer to be in a good spot today. I think they will likely script some plays for him, so he's going to get some work. And Laporta, the Raiders' DVOA is actually very high versus tight end. They're 24th or something like that. And it just hasn't shown on the box score because they haven't really played anybody. I mean, if you look, they made Adam Troutman look good week 1. He hasn't done anything since. 5 receptions, 34 yards. Knox didn't do much, but he did have a touchdown. Freiermuth had a touchdown in his only good game of the year, too, I might add. And then outside of that, it's just, been meh. So I think Laporta is in a little bit better spot than most people will give him credit for. And then if we go to the ownership for DraftKings, Laporta is high owned, but I think that Meyer is super interesting at only 17%, as is Hooper. Hooper is still involved, and we know he's a good pass catcher. He's a good blocker. He's going to be on the field in those red zone situations. So taking some stabs at him at low ownership, I think, is interesting, as is Brock Wright. The Lions like to use tight ends near the red zone or near the goal line, and Bright's in a prime spot to punch one in there. So definitely of interest. And on FanDuel, we got very similar ownership there, all of which is the exact same on that side. Now, defensive-wise, Lions definitely are in a little bit better spot defensive-wise. So they would be my preferred option. However, with a game total pushing 46, I don't love the defenses quite that much. And if I was to play one, I'd be trying to get a little different and go with maybe a little Raiders D that we have seen have the ability to get after the quarterback and force some turnovers. Hopefully one of those would go for a pick 6. On the DraftKings side, the Raiders are a little more owned, so I'd probably be staying off them, and I'd maybe just pay up for the Lions in that situation. As we have seen, the Lions can put it together. 7 sacks, forced fumble, only 6 allowed versus Atlanta. There is this capability of them to get after the quarterback as well and force some turnovers. Kickers, both are in play. I like either one of them. No telling which offense stalls out more in the red zone. Both are very susceptible to that. All in all, I think it is a very interesting slate. There are a lot of different ways to go, a lot of different ways to get different. Just make sure you're trying to figure out that. Make a game script in your head as far as how you think everybody's going to attack or how you think the game is going to go, and build your lineup accordingly. It's not often that all the WR ones, RB ones, tight end ones are the only ones that score. There's always some weird ancillary piece that makes it happen. Figure out who that is, how to get different a little bit, and attack it that way. Good luck tonight, guys. I'll be back in a little bit with the NBA DFS show, and then I'll be back on Wednesday for the Thursday night show. Have a good one, guys. Good luck. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Adios.